Hey there, and welcome to today's Explainer. If you're a focused learner trying to cut through the noise and get straight to the good stuff, well, you are in exactly the right place. Today, we're unpacking a completely fascinating, real-world case study right from the aquatic trenches. We're looking at Ang's diary entry titled, Notes on Fishkeeping, Part 275. Now, what starts off as just a routine maintenance update quickly turns into this amazing overnight fishkeeping discovery. So get ready because we're about to explore the undeniable clarity of sponge filtration. Picture this. You walk past your tank, totally expecting to see this vibrant, beautiful aquatic ecosystem, and instead, boom, you are greeted by a hazy, murky, cloudy mess. I mean, we've all been there, right? It leads us to literally the holy grail question for aquarium owners. How do you fix a cloudy aquarium overnight? It's an incredibly common and, let's be honest, completely frustrating problem. It hides your fish, and even worse, it's usually a massive red flag that something is fundamentally out of whack in the water column. Usually it's a bacterial bloom just taking over, so we're looking for a fast, rock-solid solution to get things back on track. Okay, let's dive into this. The source material puts us right into the middle of Ang's dilemma. Ang wrote, "While clearing space for new fish species, I decided to switch the existing filter to a sponge filter because the water in the tank was rather cloudy." This is just such a classic situation for hobbyists. You're trying to make room, you're shuffling bioloads around, prepping the environment for new life, but terrible water quality is standing squarely in your way. The existing setup just wasn't cutting it anymore, so Ang had to do a necessary, immediate intervention. So what did that intervention actually look like? Well, it was a remarkably simple, quick methodology. Step 1, a super brief cleaning just to get the immediate physical gunk and detritus out of the way. Step 2, a water change. Standard procedure to instantly dilute whatever is causing that cloudiness. And then Step 3, the real game changer, installing a sponge filter right in its usual place in the tank. No massive overhauls, absolutely zero complex chemical clarifiers, just a direct, simple change to how the tank's ecosystem is filtered.
Enter the absolute star of today's explainer, the humble sponge filter. Let's just take a second to appreciate how incredibly basic this piece of equipment actually is. In a hobby that is so often dominated by these highly complex, over-engineered, and honestly really expensive multi-stage canister filters, the sponge filter is famously cheap. I mean, it is quite literally just a piece of porous foam hooked up to an airline. It definitely doesn't look like a technological marvel. No moving motor parts, no expensive carbon cartridges to replace, no fancy digital readouts. But, its extreme simplicity is exactly what makes the results so wild.
Because here is what happened next. Read this quote straight from the diary. "The following day, to my amazement, the cloudy water turned crystal clear." I really want to highlight that feeling of amazement. Going from a totally murky environment to crystal clear water overnight, that is the exact rapid transformation every single fish keeper is constantly chasing. It wasn't this slow, grueling improvement over weeks of careful balancing. Nope, it was an immediate, super satisfying overnight success that completely validated swapping to that humble sponge.
Now, what's really interesting about this is the science behind why it works so powerfully. It all boils down to one thing: large surface area. The sponge isn't just a solid brick, right? Its expansive exterior and interior is just packed full of tiny interconnected pores. And yeah, sure, that acts as a great physical trap for floating debris, but more importantly, it creates a massive housing development for beneficial nitrifying bacteria. These microscopic helpers move into the sponge and literally eat up the nutrients causing the bacterial bloom. It's absolute proof that you don't need a huge, complicated machine. You just need massive surface area crammed into a small, efficient little footprint.
So the crucial point is how you can use this for your own setups. There are 3 big takeaways from Ang's notes here. First, as we just saw, it is highly effective at cleaning the water, giving you both mechanical and massive biological filtration. Second, unbeatable affordability. It's arguably the cheapest way to keep pristine water across multiple tanks. But third, and honestly, this is a really important condition from the source, it absolutely must be kept running continuously. The whole magic of the sponge filter completely relies on that constant, uninterrupted flow of water and oxygen to keep all those good bacteria happy and alive.
Now let's see how this discovery shapes Ang's entire fish room strategy. After successfully getting that crystal clear upgrade on 2 tanks, a major shift happens. Ang is scaling up to 7. After seeing that overnight success, Ang decided to switch to a single, large central air pump just to roll out these sponge filters to all 7 remaining tanks. It's such a great testament to how one simple overnight win can completely rewrite the infrastructure of an entire fish-keeping operation, making it cheaper and way easier to maintain.
But wait, as we look at the bigger picture here, we hit this fascinating little twist in the diary. Not every single tank is getting the sponge upgrade. Actually, 2 specific tanks are being left entirely off the list. I like to call this the biological exception. It's this awesome moment where you realize that even with a super cheap, totally effective piece of tech right in your hands, biology might have already solved the exact same problem in a completely natural way.
And this brilliantly illustrates the contrast between 2 totally different methods of water management. On one side, we have the sponge filter tanks, completely relying on the physical and biological mechanics of that manufactured foam we just talked about. But on the flip side, we have the duckweed tanks. Eng realized that dropping sponge filters into these 2 specific tanks felt totally unnecessary because they already had a massive, thriving population of natural duckweed. This tiny little floating plant is in there doing all the heavy lifting, sucking nitrogenous waste right out of the water column and keeping things perfectly balanced with 0 extra hardware.
Which brings us to a super important realization about keeping aquariums. As Ang perfectly puts it in the diary, nevertheless, we will see how this fares in the coming weeks. Because this isn't a closed book, it's an active, ongoing observation. The tech fix proved itself overnight for sure, but nature's duckweed solution, that's going to be monitored closely over time to make sure it keeps up as the bioloads shift around. It's just a really great reminder that fish keeping is always this active, ongoing experiment, and you've got to keep your eyes open.
Which leaves us with this final thought to chew on as we wrap up today's explainer. When you are faced with balancing your own aquatic setups, what path are you going to choose? Are you going to trust the unbeatable overnight mechanics of a humble sponge to house your beneficial bacteria? Or are you going to cultivate an environment that lets floating nature do the heavy lifting? Both clearly worked in Eng's notes, but the right choice probably just depends on what kind of ecosystem you want to build. Thank you so much for hanging out with me for this explainer. Keep observing, keep evaluating, and I will see you next time.